On today's episode of Signal Flow, we're talking about 10 things every guitar player should own. These 10 things, in my opinion, will help you become a better guitarist, will help you practice more effectively, will make you more reliable on gigs, and will help you learn some new skills. Everything we talk about in the video will be linked in the description box down below, so if you want more information, that will all be down there. We've got a lot to cover today, so without further ado, let's jump into the first thing on the list. Okay, item number one, a looper pedal. These things are invaluable tools. They're incredibly versatile. You can use them in your home to practice as well as on gigs to accompany yourself, especially if you are a solo guitarist. I've had this Digitech Jamman Solo for about 7 years now, and this has been one of my favorite tools to practice with, as well as when I was teaching lessons every week. I would take these into my lessons and help students practice soloing over changes, playing in time, coming up with parts, and they're also really useful to practice writing with. Let's say you have an idea or a chord progression or a melody that you need to find chords for. You can loop that idea and sit and add guitar parts or bass parts or whatever. You have a mono signal to send through this thing. You can loop and add ideas onto each other. Seriously, these things are awesome. I'm a big fan of the Jamman Solo. It has an SD card so you can expand the memory, but there's also good units from TC Electronics, the Ditto Looper, or a lot of delay pedals now have looper functions built into them, like the Strymon Timeline. So if you don't already own a looper, I highly recommend you pick one up. Next up on the list, a reliable tuner. Now, this might seem really obvious, but a good tuner is key for every situation you find yourself in, whether it's practicing, writing, recording, or playing a gig. Now, I'm a huge fan of these pedal style tuners for a few reasons. One, they're incredibly robust. This Polytune version 1 has been on my board for the better part of 5 years. It's got literally hundreds and hundreds of shows and sessions and rehearsals on it. It's never once failed me. In fact, the only reason it's not on my board anymore was because I upgraded to its smaller sibling, the Polytune Mini. These are super accurate, they're super reliable, they have very well lit LCD screens, which if you're like me and you play a lot of festival gigs or shows out where there's open daylight coming down on your pedal board, you need a bright screen to be able to see. They're also more accurate and reliable than clip-on tuners. I also like on these larger Polytunes, you have another 9-volt outlet, so you can use these to power another pedal on your board, which is super useful. There's plenty of great options out there. Obviously, the Boss TU3 is the old standby, but I really like the Polytune, especially the new Polytune Mini 2, because it has an incredibly bright display on it. And you can also use the feature on these where you just strum your guitar and it'll read each string individually and tell you which strings are out of tune. Now, next up is something that's super important that I think a lot of people overlook and don't pay a lot of attention to, and that's humidification. Maintaining proper humidity levels either in the room where your guitars live or in their cases is super important, even for solid body electric guitars. See, guitars are made of wood, and wood is an organic material that expands and contracts and changes and moves. And as the seasons change and the humidity levels in your areas change with them, your guitar will react to that. Now, there's two ways that I like to maintain proper humidity. First is in the case. I like to use these Humidipack from D'Addario. These are primarily for my acoustic guitars, which live in their cases pretty much full time. Now, these are super cool. You basically get these little pouches that are filled with some kind of gel-like material. So this is a two-way humidification system, meaning when the air gets too dry, this gel will start to expel humidity into your guitar's case, and when it gets too wet, it'll start to absorb that humidity back into the pouch. I've been using these for years and have been really, really happy. Now, for the room, I use a humidifier that I got on Amazon. I bought this last year. It's a multi-fun unit, and it seems to do a pretty good job of keeping the levels in the room pretty stable. This particular model is designed for a small to medium-sized room. The other thing I recommend checking out is a decent humidity gauge. Now, this is one from Brookstone. I don't remember when I got it. I've just had it around, but this is what I use to try and keep an eye on the humidity and the temperature levels in the room where my guitars live. Next up, Solid instrument cables. I don't recommend going out and spending $200 per cable on these, directional, super low capacitance snake oil cables. You're not going to notice a huge difference in tone between a $50 Mogami Gold and a $200 whatever. When you're buying a cable, you should always buy a cable where you can actually repair it when it goes bad. Not if, but when. So you want to be able to unscrew the jack and have access to the solder joints on the inside so that you can repair it yourself. The other thing I look for is a nice, good quality rubber on the outer jacket material. Cables are high wear items, especially if you're gigging a lot. These are getting thrown in and out of cases and gig bags and drug along the floor and stepped on. So you want something that has a nice solid outer jacket to protect the cable on the inside. Personally, I've been a big fan of the Mogami Gold series. I've been buying these cables for years, mainly because, at least at the time I'm making this video, they have a warranty program with Guitar Center. So if you buy a Mogami cable from Guitar Center and it goes bad, you take it back and they will swap it. No questions asked. I've done that plenty of times. The things that I recommend you stay away from are cables like this. This is a monster cable. I think this was probably 20 or 30 bucks, and this is not a good instrument cable for a few reasons. First, you can't service the ends. You see they have molded ends on here, so there's really no way to fix this cable when it breaks. The other thing is the outer rubber on this cable is really cheap. It feels plasticky. It doesn't coil very well. Now, piggybacking off that last item, our next item every guitar player should own is a soldering iron. Having your own soldering iron and knowing how to use it will open up a world of possibilities for you as a guitar player. Like we just talked about, servicing or making your own instrument cables, swapping pickups in your guitar by yourself, or learning how to build pedals from DIY kits online, or designing circuits from things that you find on Google. So knowing how to solder is a really important skill for guitarists to learn. There's plenty of great tutorials on YouTube to teach you how to do it. And when it comes to picking a good soldering iron, I'm going to hand it off to my friend Mason Marangella from Vertex Effects to tell you what he likes and how to pick a good iron.
So what I know about soldering irons is a few things. One, you need a variable temperature adjustment. The ones that don't have that make it very, very difficult if you're going to go between various types of cables with various thicknesses that have various insulator sizes. Because if you have a really thin insulator, you're not going to want to crank that thing to 800 degrees because it's going to kill it. But for a speaker cable or something more hardcore that can take that amount of heat, you're going to need that amount of heat. Otherwise, you're going to be holding your soldering iron on there for too long. And I'm going to have Rhett link my two favorite ones. One is by Heiko. The other one is by Weller. You can get them both for under $150. And I believe they both have lifetime warranties and both available on Amazon. So if there's any problem whatsoever, it's like a no-brainer. You can get your money back or get it replaced from them. The other important thing, though, with them, you need to make sure you get 4060 leaded solder. And I know it's not the most environmentally friendly to get the leaded solder, but the difference in quality and the longevity of the things that you're soldering will have much more longevity. Let's put it that way, if you're using leaded solder. So I recommend 4060 Kester. I'm going to have Brett link that for you as well, so you can get the Kester solder, the very best, and you're going to be fine. You're going to have patch cables, power cables, speaker cables that last you, decades.
Next up on the list, a solid capo. Now, the reason I like to use capos is because it opens up specific chord voicings and lick ideas that I like to play in open position. I can use a capo and play those in any of the 12 keys. So there are a few chord voicings that I really like to use in open position. For instance, this D major 11, of course E minor 9, that I can't get away with using in other keys because they take advantage of some open strings. So let's say I need to move to a different key, capo up, and I can still use these nice voicings in the key that I need to play in. So for electrics, I like to use one of these two capos. Here I have the G7th capo, and this is a really, really nice low profile, sleek design. And the thing that I like about it is you control how much pressure it puts on the strings. You just put it on the neck and squeeze it, and it locks into place. Now, if you've been around the channel for a while, you've heard me talk about how important it is to protect your hearing. As a musician, if you lose your hearing or partially lose your hearing, it's obviously going to drastically affect your ability to make music. So, earplugs are definitely making the list. I've talked about these in other videos, but they're super important, so I'm going to re-highlight them here. Now, I've used tons of different types of hearing protection over the years, everything from custom molded $200 filtered in-ears all the way to the cheap foam things that you just cram in your ear. And my favorite earplugs that I've come across are from a company called Erasers. I'm not sponsored by them. I spent the money on these from Guitar Center. They were 40 bucks, but these are the most comfortable and the best sounding earplugs I've ever used. They're really comfortable. You can wear them for hours at a time and not really notice that they're there, and they maintain a really flat frequency response. I've even started wearing these on planes when I'm trying to sleep. I'll throw these on and throw a blindfold on, and I'm out. So I'm a big fan of the Erasers. Check them out. They'll be linked below. All right, next up on the list are good cases. You definitely want to be investing in solid cases for your guitars, especially if you are gigging or traveling with your instruments at all. I'm not endorsed by Mono in any way. I've spent my money on all these cases that I own, but I've been really happy with them and really believe in them. On my right here, I have the M80 Dual Electric. This bag holds 2 solid body electric guitars, plus cables, straps, everything I need to go with me on a gig. And I have flown with this case more than any other case I own. It's been under planes, it's been in trailers, it's been under tour buses, and it's held up really, really well. Now, it is worth mentioning that I have had to warranty one of these before, but simply because this inner pocket right here developed a small rip in it. I'm confident in these cases, even with guitars that have angled headstocks like the Les Paul that I used to have and my PRS. I've never had an issue with the guitars shifting or coming unanchored from their neck mount in the pocket up here. Now, I know there are a few other companies out there that offer alternatives to the mono case. Reunion Blues is another great company. I've never owned a Reunion Blues bag, but I know players that do, and they love them. It doesn't really matter what case you go with, in my opinion, as long as you're investing in something that is quality made, reliable, and going to do a good job of protecting your guitars. Now, another thing every guitar player should own, in my opinion, are good quality straps. These are super important for 2 reasons. One, if you're playing gigs, especially long cover gigs where you're standing with a guitar on your shoulder for hours at a time, you want something that's comfortable, that spreads the weight of the instrument out over your shoulder evenly. A couple things that I always look for when I'm buying a new strap. I like thick leather ends that have robust holes drilled in them for the strap buttons. You want to look for quality stitching. If they have buckles, you want to make sure that they are nice quality buckles. If you have a nice guitar, this is one of the only insurance policies you have for keeping that guitar off the ground and suffering catastrophic damage. Another thing that I would look for are good quality strap locks. There's lots of different styles out there. I like the Dunlop ones, I like the Schaller ones. But definitely get a good strap and get good strap locks for your guitar so you can be confident in knowing that the thing's not going to pop off of your shoulder and hit the ground on a gig. And finally, every guitar player out there, in my opinion, should be buying good guitar strings. Now, this is totally subjective. Every player out there likes something slightly different when it comes to string gauge, string material, what brand of strings they like to play. Personally, I'm a fan of D'Addario strings. I've been playing them for years, and this year I became a D'Addario artist, which is super cool. For my electrics, I like the NYXL 10-46s, and for my acoustics, I like the 80-20 bronze light gauge strings. Those are just what I've been playing for years. Now, if you think about it, strings have a massive impact on the playability and tone of your instrument. If you're new to guitar, one thing I would highly recommend you do is go down to your local guitar shop and buy a bunch of different packs of strings. Buy different materials from different manufacturers and try out and find what you like. Now, over time, this may change, and it may change with different guitars and pickup combinations, but it's important to have a grasp of what's out there on the market and what you're getting for your money. Now, I like the NYXLs for a few reasons. One, they last a long time. They maintain their tone longer than some other uncoated strings out there, and these are incredibly reliable. I very, very rarely break a string when I'm playing these. Now, part of that is the string's construction, but another big part of that is your guitar's setup. So if you're not having your guitars set up, I would recommend finding a good luthier in your area, someone who you trust, who does a good job to start taking your guitars to. Once a year, once every 6 months, however often they need it, get your guitars set up. They'll play better, they'll sound better, and they'll be way more reliable. So those are the top 10 things I think every guitar player should own. Everything we talked about today is linked in the description box down below. There you can also find links to my custom Kemper profiles, as well as a link to the Rhett Shull live channel where I'm doing regular live streams every week. So if you want to subscribe to that, the link is down below. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like and comment. Let me know if I missed anything on this list. If there's something you think every guitar player should have, let me know in the comments section down below. Be sure to follow me on Instagram to stay up to date with everything I've got going on in my musical world. And if you want to contact me directly, you can find a link to my website where you can email me if you have a question or comment. Thanks for watching. That's all for today. I'm Rhett Shull, and remember, there is no plan B.